Sometimes when I'm stressed, I like to do what's called guided imagery, a sort of relaxation technique. It goes something like this. I find myself in a room, or if I were given instructions, you find yourself in a room that's quiet and you turn the lights down low. I love this church. You sit in a soft chair, close your eyes, and you imagine a nice, tranquil beach scene, for example. You imagine yourself feeling the warmth of the sand under your back and the warmth of the sun above you. You're looking at the deep blue sky. You take some deep breaths, and the tropical breeze wafts the aroma of surf and sand. As a matter of fact, you hear the gentle lapping, the rhythmic lapping of the waves softly against the shoreline. And with each breath, you find yourself relaxing, going deeper and deeper into this tranquil, serene state where nothing bothers, nothing disturbs, nothing distresses. All is peaceful, all is calm. And then you just have this thought that comes into your mind that says, I wonder how much I spent for Christmas and the bills are going to come due soon. Oh, and speaking of bills, April 15th is going to be here before I know it. Have I got all the receipts in? And what is that tax bill going to be? And, you know, between now and April 15th, I have to go to get my annual physical, and I know the doctor's going to get on to me, and who knows what the test results are going to be. And after that physical, I go in for my performance appraisal at work, and my boss has been on my back. It's going to be bad. I'm not going to get my raise. If I don't get my raise, how am I going to pay April 15th or the bills? And, oh, no, it's one thing after another. It's doctors, and it's the bosses, and it's the bills. And let me just take a deep breath. I'll awaken, and I'll feel relaxed and calm. You know what I mean? You ever do that? You think you can think your way out of stress. Put yourself in a beach scene. But if you're like me, those techniques, relaxation techniques, work best when I'm already relaxed. Otherwise, if I enter that beach with stress on the outside world, I guarantee you there's going to be a black cloud in front of the sun. There has to be a better way, or at least a complementary way, of dealing with stress. And I think, in the words that you heard Stephanie read from Paul, there is. The technique or the tips or the help that Paul gives us is based on the principle that the best way to deal with a negative emotion is with a positive action. The best way to deal with a negative emotion like stress is with a positive action. And the techniques that the Apostle Paul will give us in dealing with stress come from his writings when he was in prison. Now, you're talking about a stressful place. When he wrote the letter to the Philippians, he had no idea whether he was going to be released or be killed. That is stress. And yet, he writes the most amazing words from that dark, dank prison cell. Rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I say, in case you didn't hear me the first time, again I say, rejoice, rejoice, be glad, be happy. And the only way I know that he can relax and deal with stress and say such a thing with integrity as he did is that he did three things, three positive actions, if you will. And I would think that if he were here today, he would give us those three techniques and invite us to do the same. Number one, he would say to us, love gently. Let your gentleness be evident to all. Gentleness. The Greek word for gentleness, is hard to translate into English. It carries the sense of this. In whatever situation you encounter or with whomever you encounter, don't get too involved in such a way that you work yourself up. Instead, get distance by being gentle, by being sweet, by being generous. Get distance from the situation. That's the exact opposite of most of us. Too often we let people's words or actions or situations just increase our blood pressure and do all sorts of bad things to us emotionally and physiologically. But Paul says, no. Love someone, love people in a situation gently. Get distance so that you can really love as Christ loved. I think a wonderful exercise to do this, to get the ability to love gently with that distance and so that you can be fully present in a positive way with a person. The best way to do that and get practice is to do one of the gazillion service opportunities we have in this church. I would challenge everyone here, before this year is over, and it's just started, before this year is over, do at least one service opportunity that this church offers. You will get practice in being a gently loving person. Last fall, I was able to participate with the work team from this church that worked on a Saturday, or one of the Saturdays I was with them, worked on the Habitat for Humanity house, sponsored by Methodist churches on into the city. And as I was with this work team working on this one house on that Saturday, there were other Habitat houses close by with other work teams. And I started noticing the people from those teams. They were very interesting to me. You had some people who looked decidedly un-Methodist in the typical fashion. In other words, they were young. Remember, the average age of the Methodists is 57. Well, these people weren't 57. Some had long hair, some had beards, some had tattoos, some had piercings. There were some of them here. And on the other hand, you had people working, some of whom looked like they just retired from the Marine Corps. You know, crew cuts, clean-shaven, square jaw. And here they were, not arguing, because these are people who could really have differences of opinions, lifestyles, attitudes, whatever. But here were people working side by side. Why? Because they were united in loving gently, doing good. And in the process, they could do good with each other. There's no stress. They loved gently. We must do the same. The second way to deal with stress, Paul would say, pray thankfully. And I admit, your pastor, I have difficulty at times doing that. Like those relaxation techniques that I can use best when I'm already relaxed. It's easiest for me to pray thankfully when I'm feeling grateful and happy and things are going my way. But Paul, writing from the prison cell, said, when you pray, do not pray for what you want. Do not pray to be delivered on your terms from whatever it is that's causing you stress or pain. Now, if you pray that way, that's not prayer, it's a monologue. It is treating God like the celestial Santa giving a list of what you think you need. No. Pray thankfully. In whatever situation, you look for things you can be thankful for, people for whom you can be thankful. You focus on the thanksgiving part of prayer, then it becomes a dialogue. Then God can communicate. Then you open yourself up for God to give you vision to see things you had not seen before. For God to be able to teach you things you had not known before. For God to shape your heart, to shape your character. I love a prayer that John Dahl wrote. He wrote for the LA Times. And this prayer that he prayed could have been prayed by Paul. Thanks for the hardship and pain I experienced as a child. The sickness and death I survived. They were only lessons I learned in becoming a man. Thanks for the painful need for acceptance I had tried to replace the loved ones, or as I tried to replace the loved ones I had lost. The need gave me an understanding and empathy for others with even a greater need for love and understanding than myself. Thanks for the strength and hope through each stage of life to continue to improve and understand not only my own life, but also all my brothers and sisters of the world. And above all, thanks for being a caring and loving God who resides within each of us to remind us that impossible is possible and that forgiveness is not only possible, but necessary. Yeah, Paul could have prayed such a thankful prayer. He could have prayed that prayer whether it's sunny on a beach or dark in a cell, because that is the prayer that grounds him and lowers that blood pressure, you know. And the third thing Paul would have said is focus positively. Anytime I want a lesson in humility, I challenge my 14-year-old son to a game on the Xbox. He obliterates me. I've never seen fingers move that fast, you know? All the while, gaze focused like a laser on the screen. And that's not just a teenage thing. Any of us, I think. We all just are, nowadays especially, magnetized, drawn in by that video screen, whether it's a TV or an iPod or an iPad or a who knows what, you know? No matter what our diagnosis of HDD or ADD or whatever it is could be, our attention deficit. Now, we all have the ability to focus, to hone in. The question is, what do we focus or hone in on? At work, do you focus on how bad and overbearing the boss is? Or do you focus on how you're able to make a difference in this world by what you're doing? At school, do you focus on how mean the teacher is? Or do you focus on how the world is opening up to you by what you're learning? At home, do you focus on sitting on the sofa wondering who's going to win Dancing with the Stars? Or do you focus on getting to know each other around the dinner table? We all can focus. It's just, what do we focus on? And if in any role that you call yourself or find yourself in, if you can focus on what is true, noble, right, pure, lovely, admirable, praiseworthy, well, I would pretty much bet that that blood pressure will go down. You know what I mean? Actually doing any of these three things that Paul said, of loving gently, praying thankfully, and focusing positively, that could lower the blood pressure. Keep the temples from throbbing quite as much, but it takes work, because we do have knee-jerk reactions to so many things, so many of the stressors in our lives. But if we have that grace to do that, these New Year resolutions of doing those three things, then maybe we will be able to experience what Paul said in the concluding verses. And now, when you do these things, when you've learned them from me, you've heard them from me, then you will experience the God of peace. Peace. You know, as I was writing this sermon, it dawned on me, Jesus, on the night in which he had the most stress ever, his last earthly ministry night, at that time, Jesus did those three things. He embodied them. You know, he could have been away from by himself saying, oh no, and imploded himself with the worry of the cross the next day, but no, he loved gently. He invited his friends to a dinner. And then he prayed thankfully as he took the bread. And what did he do? He blessed it. He blessed bread that after he ate it would not even go through his body before he was killed. But nonetheless, he prayed thankfully for the bread, broke it, gave it to his disciples, saying, this is my body given to you. And likewise, after supper, with gratitude, he took the cup and he gave it to his disciples. And he said, this is the blood of the new covenant, poured out for you and for many, for the forgiveness of sins. Do this as often as you will in remembrance of me. And after supper, he focused positively. He asked strength not to run away from the cross, but to go to the cross. And he prayed for strength for his followers, that after they abandoned him, they might come back together as his church. Yes, Jesus knew what stress was, but he also knew how to claim peace, because after all, it's not an accident we call him the Prince of Peace. Let us pray.